What's good, YouTube? Adriannthakidd, and we back in this bit. You know what I'm saying? Today we got the Spongehenge, or the Spongehenge theory. You know what I'm saying? SpongeBob SquarePants. You know what I'm saying? Now, hey, bro, the freaking I don't know who wrote SpongeBob, but like them creators, they be doing extra work behind the scenes. You know what I'm saying? Putting in work. You know what I'm saying? With these theories. So let's get straight to it.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace when it comes
Ew,
to
so get away
this is
from
the
me.
third installment in an unexpected yet incredibly popular
Spongehenge
series where I
theory.
take SpongeBob episodes and try to find the meaning in these very formative experiences the show's characters undergo.
Alright,
Whereas we
some
usually
nice
end up
little jazz
talking about
music.
the old
I feel
Squidster,
it.
today I want to talk about the Sponge himself, SpongeBob SquarePants,
Alright,
and
let's get
arguably the most traumatizing episode he's in. When you think of peak SpongeBob,
The most
you usually
traumatizing
think of
episode
those
was that
first 3
freaking gorilla
seasons,
suit
but
one.
today's episode actually comes from
That's
well into
scary.
season 5. And it's called Spongehenge. Spongehenge, a witty reference to Stonehenge, is one of SpongeBob's least funny episodes, but it's also one of its scariest, as it tells the story of SpongeBob being followed by jellyfish to a point where he has to
Definitely
escape
not the
society
scariest.
altogether. It's a very unsettling episode, and that's an understatement. It's also in a lot of people's top 10 worst SpongeBob episodes lists. But it's a lot
Dang.
more than that, and to understand why, let's take it from the top. The episode starts with 2 restaurant goers leaving a diner with takeout, when all of a sudden they notice a heavy gust of wind. The one fish claims it's Neptune, the god of the sea in Roman mythology, and the other claims everyone knows Poseidon is the ruler of the sea, which according to most websites
Neptune,
is
Poseidon?
the
I
actual
don't know.
truth, and is also the god of the sea.
I don't
from
believe in
Greek
no other god than
mythology.
God.
At the end of the day, the wind blows away the fish's takeout food, and he screams, "Why, dear Neptune?" The leftovers fly over the city until they hit SpongeBob in the face. He lifts them up
Dang.
and recognizes that it is indeed
That man got a
goulash.
Popeye's chicken
Now,
sandwiches.
goulash was an oddly specific choice for the writers to use, and I looked up the symbolism behind the dish, and I got nothing, it's just goulash. But in the process of tossing out the goulash, SpongeBob discovers a sound that the wind makes in his holes. It doesn't take long for this music to reach a
Bruh, the wind was really
jellyfish
playing
that
with this
grows
man's
pretty
holes, but
attached
that
to
was
Sponge.
crazy.
And by attached, I mean attached. He crawls into SpongeBob's head and swarms around his brain until the morning. But come the morning, the jellyfish doesn't
What
want
the
to
heck?
leave. In fact, he sends over a swarm of jellyfish that prevent SpongeBob from being able to go to work. He's eventually
Facts.
dragged into work via a hook by his boss, Mr. Krabs, only to show up to work pretty much dead. But he isn't at work for long because the jellyfish swarm the Krusty Krab and take him away. So now his work is gone, so where to next? Patrick's house, where the
Facts.
jellyfish actually sting Patrick and leads to Pat kicking out SpongeBob for being a negative influence. What a terrible friend, to be honest. So SpongeBob is forced to leave society, and he crawls into the one place they can't find.
barely
for
remember
hero,
this
a
episode,
cave,
but-
where
but
he
I
sits
do at
out
the
for
same time.
years and constructs a stone replica of himself using a rock, and eventually grows that facial hair he always wanted. Then he gets the idea to use that rock, but bigger versions of it, to lure the jellyfish away from him.
Now, wasn't this
He
real?
essentially recreates Stonehenge. He goes back
Yeah.
to Bikini Bottom, and the world is gone, a reference to the Planet of the Apes.
Dang.
Flash forward another few thousand years, and aliens have taken over and are still examining these strange rock figures. And that's the end of the episode. And that's a pretty dark ending.
Hey,
no?
hold on.
I think this episode is definitely one of the show's most unsettling, like I said, as far as
Bro, this episode right here with the freaking gorilla suit, dude. This is the most, bro. This still give me the he be the
how it
GBs,
leaves
you know what I'm
For
saying?
one, canonically, it assumes that those last moments were the last that Bikini Bottom saw of SpongeBob, and the
Facts.
last that we saw of Bikini Bottom altogether, which is pretty depressing considering Patrick's last words were that he was a negative influence and that Mr. Krabs spent his last moments reeling him in, abusing the poor lad. And SpongeBob just
The
kind
poor
of
laddie.
disappeared and went crazy, and we're to assume he just went crazier and eventually died alone. And as soon as I learned that this was episode 99B,
What the
that's when it
heck?
hit me that this is most
99,
likely
boy?
just the last SpongeBob episode. We're forgetting one small detail though, and it's what happens at that beginning. If this really was Neptune or Poseidon, we're to assume that this wipeout was intentional.
How the
It
heck is
leaves
there
us with
wind
two
underwater?
questions of why
That
did
makes
this
sense.
happen, and what is the point? Now my first thought was, oh, maybe Poseidon is just really annoyed with being called Neptune. A lot of this is him getting his revenge on society. But then I was like, no, it's gotta be more than that. In this episode are themes of both religious beliefs and climate change, and I think this episode
Yeah.
serves as a statement for how a civilization reacts when both their beliefs and physical surroundings are altered. I do think the root of the entire episode is in that small conversation at the beginning, especially after further research into the religious lore of Bikini Bottom. Based on
Isn't
what I
that
could
Neptune? Neptune?
Poseidon wasn't mentioned in the series at all up until this episode. He does later show up in Sponge on the Run, but honestly, that movie is so detached from everything else in the show.
That's not the first time he shows up. Cause I remember bro has a son that like hated him type stuff. You know what I'm saying? Hold on.
I could find, Poseidon wasn't mentioned in the series at all up until this episode.
Maybe that was somebody
He does later show up
Neptune. Maybe
in Sponge on the Run, but honestly, that
I'm
movie
finna
is
look
so
it up.
detached from everything else in the show. I don't even want to take it into consideration. But for the most part, it's been established many times that Neptune is in fact the ruler of the sea. Most notably,
Yeah, that dude.
the
That's what I'm talking
episode,
about.
as well as the movie. But something I noticed, especially
That's what I'm
after
talking
this
about.
fish's argument, is that I don't think Neptune was ever a god. Sure, he had godly powers, but that didn't necessarily make him a god himself. In fact, in the
Who the
first
heck is
SpongeBob
that?
movie, it's made very clear that he's actually a king.
Oh,
Honestly, he's barely that.
tripping.
When he loses his crown and reveals his bald spot, he feels pretty powerless. Sure, he shares the same traits as the mythological god Neptune,
That
that he
shit me
has a
die.
short temper, but there's nothing in this movie or in any of the seasons that suggests King Neptune is a god. In fact, a god is
Bro, he's a
technically
seahorse.
ageless, and if King Neptune is going bald, it doesn't add up. Which is my way of
It's
saying
a
that
cartoon
she's right.
character
This
show.
wind is definitely not King Neptune, but I also don't think it's Poseidon. See, I think Poseidon exists, sure. If I gotta include Sponge on the Run, I will. And it makes the case for him being an actual god in this universe, but that said, that doesn't necessarily mean that this destruction is necessarily caused by Poseidon. Based on that movie, Poseidon just doesn't seem like the type to destroy Bikini Bottom for any particular reason. There's no lore suggesting
Bro, when did this
he wants
drop?
revenge.
What the heck
If he
is
gets
this?
angry, it just doesn't add up. So now I'm like, what is this wind? For
Man,
the
look
record,
like
the wind
Eugene
continues
Krabs.
for the next 3,000 years. It never stops. And I'm just like, where is it coming from? Why is it happening? So I start thinking, Neptune. Oh, Neptune. The actual planet of Neptune is rarely, if ever, referenced in the show.
Isn't
Now,
it,
I'm
like,
not
only
good
made of
with,
water?
Space science, but not only is Neptune made mostly of water, but it's also famously extremely windy. You Google the windiest planet and you literally get Neptune, which, if you know where I'm going with this, is to suggest that this episode is the story of a civilization crumbling physically and mentally as their entire beliefs and existence are questioned, as they have been living on a different planet the entire time. According to Ismail Hamdi, the only way for a god to die is to destroy the significance their names hold. In this conversation, the debunking of Neptune as the god of the sea essentially kills Neptune as a god, redefining the name as less of a figure and more as the planet in which these fish live. Now, a few things. Something that immediately debunks this is the numerous times SpongeBob and his gang make their way onto land, all of which come across very Earth-like. When you look up Planet
that
Earth
episode
on the
was fire.
SpongeBob Wikipedia, there's basically a episode for every continent out there. They've been all over the place. But most of this show, through this lens, can be assumed to be a hallucination or false reality. There's tons of theories that SpongeBob is hallucinating for most of the show. A concrete episode
I heard
we can
that
cite
too.
as an
I
explanation
can't
for
even
where
cap.
we are in the universe
Isn't this the episode where SpongeBob took them perks and then started tweaking, bro?
is Sandy's rocket, where they go into space. In this episode, it's never specifically shown that they leave Earth.
Dang.
They do circle the moon, which is a stretch. Neptune is pretty far from that, but that's not really the point. They get there and they come back. And that said, maybe this isn't our moon. Sandy's size suggests that this is actually way too small. My point is, it's never shown that they're specifically leaving Earth or coming back to it, so this could very well be Neptune the whole time. The thing about this theory is because it's rooted in a false reality, most of the episodes that prove Bikini Bottom takes place on Earth can be debunked because they've been living through a false lens. And also, a lot of those episodes don't add up with this original SpongeBob timeline I'm basing things off of. But their
Facts.
literal home isn't the only thing that breaks in this episode. In fact, there's a few things we should be looking at. One of which is obviously SpongeBob. SpongeBob's entire life falls apart, starting with what used to be one of his favorite activities turning into
How does a sponge live in a
followed by
pineapple
him being
under the
late
sea?
for the first time in his career as a fry cook, which
SpongeBob
coincidentally
SquarePants.
also ends up being his last, and then being beaten senseless by his boss, and then being left abandoned by his own best friend. The guy is tortured. What breaks is SpongeBob's perception.
Bro, not this again. Hey, hold on, y'all. I'm gonna fix this Wi-Fi. Alright, y'all, I fixed it. But I lost my spot because the video started playing out of nowhere. So
believed that
I'm
they
gonna
were
just say we right here.
Neptune, and this episode proved some people disagree with that, which is horrifying. That debunking King Neptune, this singular figure, embracing the truth of their surroundings, is enough to cause such a chaotic disruption. Whatever they held onto with King Neptune was apparently tons of good morals, and it poses the question of what is lost for SpongeBob as he transforms into a psychotic mess, deprived of connection and forced to make do with a rock after assuming everyone hates him. I see this episode as a horror story that after years of SpongeBob using jellyfish as food or as prey, that nature, now fully recognized, is coming back to haunt him, treating him and the rest of Bikini Bottom as prey. When that disassociation happens, SpongeBob loses his mind. His world, now sanded over, is gone. His friends assumed to have died, and like them, SpongeBob is assumed to starve and die a slow, painful death in a barren wasteland, which comes down to his legacy. His legacy is Spongehenge, a mysterious structure that, as proven by the aliens of the future, has this unknown origin. I mean, perhaps it's a happy ending, considering they serve as a place of celebration for jellyfish every year, but it's undoubtedly unsettling, seeing as though SpongeBob's only legacy, a legacy that's lasted thousands of years, was his final suffering. And I think that's it.
Probably.
While like to find
that statue is probably meant to remember him.
Does what it does. Spongehenge is left ambiguous in a really terrifying way. That Bikini Bottom took place on Neptune all along, and that the citizens died a terrible, mysterious death with the realization of that. SpongeBob episodes usually leave you with some sort of message, and the message here is that the universe is something more powerful than any form of human connection, and that nature can be violent enough to wipe out entire civilizations if it comes down to that. And that's how SpongeBob ends. So yeah, with all that being said, thanks for watching. Check out Spongehenge and form your own opinion. And before you head out, I want to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. Now, Squarespace...
That's it for that video, man. This dude actually sat here, you know what I'm saying, watched the episode, went more in depth, you know what I'm saying, looking up planets and big words and all that type of things of that nature, you know what I'm saying. So, hey, shout out to this dude. What's his name? Shout out to him. I can't say his name. I'm not even gonna try to butcher it, bro. You know what I'm saying. But, hey, hope y'all enjoyed this video, man. If y'all did, make sure to leave a like. Leave y'all thoughts in the comment section below. You know what I'm saying. Yeah. Hey, follow my socials at the bottom. You know what I'm saying. Adriannthakidd, we out. Peace.